Can you have joy and peace in the midst of incredible trials, medical crisis, and suffering? We'll find out how our guests today have managed to do just that next on Significant Insights. Hello, welcome to the program. As usual, it's good to have you. Disproportionate joy. What do those words mean? Simply, the joy experienced is more than what you would expect from the circumstances. We would expect to be joyful when our lives are going well, but what about when the opposite happens, like when we get a bad medical report? Can we be joyful anyway? Eric and Ruth Brown, our guests today, have used those words, disproportionate joy, to describe their lives. And it's obvious that God is working through their difficult circumstances. For them, it all began at a 20-week ultrasound with a third child, a daughter they named Pearl. They learned she had a very serious birth defect. Eric, who's a photographer, began chronicling Pearl's journey online. His photos and blogging have gone viral, and people all over the world have been following Pearl's story. She wasn't expected to be born alive, but when Greg Bogdan spoke with Eric and Ruth last year, Pearl was 3 years old and thriving. Still, her life is very difficult. She will likely never talk, never walk, perhaps even sit up on her own. In the pictures that you'll see today, she hasn't had her cleft palate surgically fixed. That's because surgery is both risky and unnecessary. It's actually easier for Pearl to breathe without the surgery. We start the conversation with the Browns and that first ultrasound that would change the course of their lives.
So you had two children, and then you know the story of kind of why you're here today obviously starts with your pregnancy with your third child, Pearl. Tell us about that experience, about specifically starting with the pregnancy.
Brennan was 4 at the time. Abby was 2. Found out we were pregnant with our third, and went for our regular ultrasound, which was at 20 weeks. The technician was kind of quiet, kind of alluded to something being off, but made it sound just like it was the angle that the baby was at. Sent us on to our midwife and said, "Oh, you'll probably just have to come back for some more pictures later." Midwife entered the room and could barely fully come in the room before she had tears running down her face. She was like, "That ultrasound was not good." And so told us the name of the condition. It's called holoprosencephaly, which basically means that Pearl's brain did not form correctly in utero. Most kids with her condition don't make it all the way through the pregnancy. Very few are born alive, and then few thrive afterwards. And so lots of times they suggest that you terminate the pregnancy and try again. Right. So she sent us to a high-risk OB for more information, better imaging, and just to talk through it a little bit more. Because when she initially said that, I was like, that doesn't sound like something we could do. Right. We saw our baby girl wave in the ultrasound. She's obviously alive right now, and so we don't want to cut that short. The first OB was very stern about suggesting terminating the pregnancy. And when we were very firm that we would not, he basically washed his hands and said, "Well, I'll find somebody else to take care of you for the rest of this pregnancy." Kept having regular checkups. She was growing slowly, but every time she was still moving around. Her little heart was still beating. So she ended up being born about 3 weeks early, and came out fighting. We were scared as could be during that whole process. They had told us that, we might expect 15 seconds, 15 hours, not likely 15 days. So my sister had actually kept a lot of the going home baby things in her car trunk in case we didn't need them, that I wouldn't have to physically take them out of my house. But we were thrilled to call her up and say, "Yeah, we're going to need the car seat, bring it up to the hospital." go unpack that pack and play and set it up in our bedroom, go get some more diapers, like, baby girl's coming home.
I remember going to Toys R Us the day we brought her home, and I'm sure the salesman thought I was out of my mind, 'cause I was so giddy about a bassinet and trying to like tell him all the reasons I needed a bassinet and I could get any bassinet in the store and it didn't matter. And he was like, I don't know about this guy. Here's our priciest bassinet if you would like it.
Spend all you want.
Yeah, I was like a
Wow.
kid in a candy shop.
So, I mean, those few first days, first weeks, I mean, we still came home on hospice support. They were still expecting time to be really, really limited. We didn't know what we were doing. There were several nights when we still thought, you know, this might be it. Let's get a few more pictures together. Let's read her the Bible. Let's sing songs. There were still lots of those days, but there were more and more and more of those days. She's 3.5 now. She still has lots of struggles. She has seizures daily. A cold can put her in the ICU for a week. She can't really move around by herself. She can't really express what she wants except for being content or unhappy.
Okay.
But she can't really say, Mom, this is what I need.
So she can't speak.
She does not speak.
Does she? Can she see?
She can see a little bit. She
Okay.
seems to focus on someone's face if they're holding her, but she won't track a toy if you try to put it in front of her face.
There's no telling what she does with the info. Like, if her eyes receive the visual information, what her
Gotcha.
brain does with that.
Okay.
There's no way to really know.
Okay.
Just like same for hearing.
What is a day like as far as the amount of work that goes into caring for her?
Yeah, she's kind of prone to respiratory illnesses. Part of being non-mobile means that you can't really work out whenever you have junk in your lungs.
Okay.
So we do respiratory treatments twice a day that take about an hour. She eats through a feeding tube that goes into her stomach. She has a little pump that helps it run through. It takes about an hour, 4 times a day. She's on a boatload of medicines for seizures, for breathing, for diet. Her sleep is kind of hit or miss, so she'll often take a couple of naps during the day, often wakes up a couple times during the night. Around all of that, we try to squeeze in a little bit of physical therapy and lots of cuddles.
And how about your other kids when you first brought them home from the hospital? How did they deal with it?
They were over the moon,
Yeah.
and they still are. They would like to be with her pretty much every second that they can.
It's awesome.
Brennan will ask me to wheel her into his bedroom so he can play the guitar for her. They both like to help take care of her medically. Abby likes to help set up Pearl's feedings in the mornings. Brennan likes to help set up her respiratory treatments. It's really, really sweet and amazing how much they want to be with her all the time.
Yeah.
The 2 older Brown children are getting a college education in compassion and servanthood. Eric and Ruth discuss the controversial issue of quality of life after the break.
Is her life fun and comfortable? Probably not. But is it counted? Is it meaningful? Is it of quality? I would say absolutely.
Welcome back. Today, Greg Bogdan is talking with Eric and Ruth Brown, parents of Pearl, who was born with a severe genetic disorder that involved her brain not fully forming. Frankly, it's a true miracle that she's thriving today. Eric Brown has been chronicling Pearl's journey on Instagram and other online sites like disproportionatejoy.com. Online, he blogs his views and what God has been revealing to him through Pearl's life, which is how we begin part 2.
Pearl can't hustle or chase her dreams. She isn't having her best life now, and she certainly can't step into any destiny. She can't follow her passions or live adventurously, and hasn't a clue what it means to try harder. She hasn't been healed and was given these afflictions by the loving hand of her Creator, who knows her intimately and crafted her for her and our good and His glory. The promises that He made to her will, in large part, not be fulfilled until her last breath. He carries her as she bears His image. She is helpless otherwise. If the theology that you're teaching or the banner that you're flying can't be honestly preached to Pearl, it's probably not true. Hold it loosely, or maybe ditch it.
So Eric, what is it that's caused you to want to chronicle Pearl with the pictures?
We all have this desire to be known and understood, and I found myself at a loss for how to do that. My brother would call every 6 to 9 months, and he called one time after just a really hard season. He was like, "So how are you guys?" And I was at a loss for, how do I explain this in 5 minutes? And I knew that if I did explain it in 5 minutes, I would have this unrealistic expectation that he would immediately understand and empathize and be able to know how to engage. So it was trying to bring people in, to say, man, can you please help understand? But then it started going through different cycles where there would be tons of light and levity in our home, and I just wanted to share this side. And some days it's really dark and it's hard and it's confusing and you can't see straight, and I started sharing that side. A lot of other parents would say, man, I didn't know how to say that, but I feel deeply what you've said, and it resonates, and thanks. Just trying to do the most honest telling of what life is like, because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to invite people in. And the return has been phenomenal. Because if you're weak and you're vulnerable, you foster a community of other people being weak and vulnerable. And then all of a sudden you find yourselves having incredible conversations after the kids go to bed and somebody else comes over for a visit, and you sit around your kitchen table crying because we're all okay to be weak here. So I realized that this could likely go unsaid, but I'm extremely pro-life, across the board, and not just when the discussion centers around the unborn. The last thing I want to do is to attempt to undermine those fighting on behalf of society's most vulnerable. But I watched a new video this week and heard once again a popular sentiment that's likely unhelpful in preserving human dignity. The statement goes something like this: what if the child you abort could have grown up to be the next president or a fireman or Mother Teresa? I get what's being said, but just beneath the surface, it seemingly reflects a utilitarian view of human life similar to those seeking to eradicate special needs via terminated pregnancies. Potential for societal contribution or skill or productivity is hardly a reason to choose life, especially when contribution is measured on a scale as that. Seems to me that the primary reason to support life is that when God is creating and building, we ought to participate rather than interrupt. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, or maybe it's just me and I'm missing something. Perhaps my view is skewed because of Pearl. I get the sentiment, but I think the subtleties of such a perspective can be damaging and dehumanizing to children who didn't make it to term, or who did but live with severe disability.
But obviously there's something going on in you guys spiritually that's deeper than I think what you maybe would have ever expected.
Absolutely is. And that type of writing is inviting my community, like, come and see and taste all of these beautiful things that God has shown.
So as we look at your guys' situation and as we look at where we are in society, is there a quality of life in Pearl? And so many people may be looking at it saying, they don't agree. What would you say to that?
See, I think it's a misplaced definition on quality of life.
In her life has helped me to redefine my goals for my other kids too. When I look at my children now and what I want for them, I want them to love others and I want them to be loved. There are lots of people in the world who have what they would call great jobs and lots of money and comfortable homes. and they don't have anyone who loves them.
Yeah.
And you see people taking drastic measures all the time because their life is not how they thought it was going to turn out. Yeah. And so it's really driven home to me that that those are not the things that matter. What you can do for society, like we were talking earlier, like the president or Mother Teresa or a firefighter, that is your life an encouragement to others. Are other people glad to be around you and take comfort from being around you? When Brennan is the most upset, he does not come to Eric or me or Abby. He wants to sit on the couch and hold Pearl. And he knows, he feels so comfortable with her. And it helps him to get back into a home
Because if
place.
Pearl's all right, he's going to be all right.
Yeah.
He feels that deeply.
Wow.
Never fails, every single time, when he's just heartbroken or confused. Sometimes he'll pull up his chair next to her crib and start playing guitar or reading her books. Literally, she never responds. But there's something happening there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. What would you say the biggest thing that you've learned through these past few years has been?
Be weak. That it's not a bad thing to be weak. And I fight it all the time. I mean, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a male, a man. We all feel this weird thing to perform at a certain level and be excellent on all fronts and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be self-reliant. And once again, we're missing out on the beauty of God wanting us to be weak. This strength is made perfect in our weakness. It's much easier said than done.
I have learned peace in a different way. It's easy to think that you feel God's peace when things aren't too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
We had struggles before Pearl. But I have felt peace on such a deeper level in resting in God doing good things, even when it's difficult, and not separating the two, not saying that you can only have peace when it's not difficult, but to have peace in the difficulty has been a new thing for me.
If you want to follow Pearl's journey, you can do so through Instagram or by going to disproportionatejoy.com. On that site, there is also a way for you to financially help the Brown family if you feel led to do so. I'm sure that the medical bills can be overwhelming. When we return, Joni Eareckson Tada talks about thanking God for our challenges. We'll be right back.
Whenever people came to him just to get their pains and their problems fixed, then the Savior would always back away.
Welcome back. The Brown family's lives are full of challenges. But rather than discard Pearl's life in utero because it would have made their lives easier, Eric and Ruth Brown entered into the trials and suffering of carrying a disabled child to term. And they are experiencing joy in raising Pearl. Joni Eareckson Tada, who has lived in a wheelchair for nearly 5 decades, talks about embracing our challenges in today's Final Thoughts.
I've been sitting in this wheelchair for more than 47 years. That is a long time. And you can imagine that during all those years of quadriplegia and the years that I struggled against stage 3 cancer and the years that I've dealt with chronic pain, I have often asked God about miraculous healing. What does the Bible have to say about healing? Well, in the Gospel of Mark, in the 1st chapter, Jesus is healing a lot of sick and diseased and disabled people. He does so in the town of Capernaum all the way through sunset. Well, the people return to their homes. The next morning they come back looking for Jesus so that more people can be healed. But Jesus is nowhere to be found. He had obviously gotten up early in the morning and had gone off to a solitary place to pray. When Simon and his companions finally find Jesus, they say to him, "Jesus, all these people at the bottom of the hill are looking for you." And Jesus replies to them in the 38th verse of the first chapter of Mark, "Let's go to the nearby villages where I can preach there also. For," now get this, "for this is why I have come." Right there, Jesus underscores his priorities. And it wasn't as though he was not concerned about the people at the bottom of the hill with their cancers and their handicapping conditions and their paralysis. No, it's just their physical problem was not his main focus. Their soul was his main focus. And he wanted to go to other villages so that he could preach the gospel that says, sin kills, hell is real, but God is merciful, his kingdom can change you, and I am your passport. That was what was on Jesus' heart. And whenever people came to him just to get their pains and their problems fixed, then the Savior would always back away. When you look at Mark, you've got to really consider Jesus' priorities in terms of healing. Because this same man who said to people with blind eyes, "Eyes be opened," and the same man who looked at a withered hand and healed it, is the same Savior who said, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your hand leads you astray, cut it off. Right there we see the priorities of Jesus Christ when it comes to physical healing. Oh yes, physical healing is a marvelous display of his power, but how much more marvelous it is to endure a hardship, a cancer, a handicapping condition, a disability that does not get healed, and still trust in God. I often said when I had cancer, cancer doesn't win if I die, but cancer does win if I fail to cherish Jesus Christ. So when you look at your own affliction and you cry desperately to be healed of your physical problems, remember the priorities of Jesus Christ. Remember that he is interested, yes, in your body, of course he is, but he's more interested in the condition of your soul. He wants you to trust him, to learn to grow nearer to him, and to believe that he has the power to not only help you smile in spite of your problems, but miraculously, he has the power to help you smile through the problems, because of the problems. And that is the biggest miraculous healing of all, to smile not in spite of your problems, but to smile because of them. God bless you, and thanks for taking into your heart this short lesson.
I would like to thank Joni Eareckson Tada, a good friend and somebody that I have a huge amount of admiration for her very encouraging and challenging words. You know, one of the things that I think is very important for us to understand as Christians is that God has, and the Bible has never promised us that there wouldn't be struggles. I've been reading through the book of Acts and with the early church and some of the struggles that the Apostle Paul and Peter and some of the others went through, even to the point that for the gospel's sake, when they were doing things that were good for the people, they were still persecuted and at times beaten, but nevertheless, they saw beyond that. They saw the hope in Jesus Christ, and they rose above those circumstances. God never promised us that there wouldn't be struggles and difficulties in our life, but what he did promise us, and it's important to understand, he promised us that his grace and his guidance and his joy and his peace would be with us in every struggle. Thanks for joining us. God bless you. See you next time.